Farewell, happy fields, where joy forever dwells. Hail horrors, hail infernal world, and thou profoundest hell. Receive thy new possessor, one who brings a mind not changed by place or time. The mind is its own place, and in itself can make a heaven of hell, a hell of heaven. Detective Lee had forgotten what the sunrise really looked like. He hadn't left the city in over a year. Dawn broke in the silvered glass of the police cruiser. Everything that passed was a relic of another time. Wilding fields, abandoned farms, rusted factories, the occasional cult draped in blankets staring out from as many reclaimed churches as the new movements could hold. Outside the city, something strange had been woven into the landscape, into the culture, into the past, and it was impossible now to unravel it. Lee flicked through the case data floating in front of him. Han Shu, the rising star of the city's digital industry, was accused of kidnapping. The alleged victim, Joy Gray, called her parents before her ID was tracked in the Electric Glade, a VR domain owned by Han's mother, Ruby Sue. Lee's partner, Gong, woke for a moment with a grunt.
"Are you there?"
he asked in a voice like churning gravel. Not long, Lee replied, bringing his feet onto the windscreen and darkening the surrounding glass. Gong grunted again and leaned back in his seat, his ill-fitting uniform stretched over his huge, muscle but aging body. Gong was months from the end, his pension enough to cover retirement in VR until he died on an electronic beach, hedonistic pleasure a heart attack away. Lee was 32, athletic, focused and clean. He'd worked nights for a decade. This was the first real case since internal affairs had put the mark on him. If it hadn't been for cops like Gong, he might have made captain years ago. But corruption was like a plague. Once it was in the air, eventually you were going under too. Lee brought up the images of the alleged suspect and victim. Han Shu was 24, good-looking in a youthful, carefree way that would be gone by 30. He had a pale complexion, wide shoulders and a narrow waist. There wasn't much data, but when Han had frequented events in the city, he'd been dressed in a countercultural style. He would have looked ridiculous if he didn't have the life to match it, but his mother was cultural royalty, and Han had coded entire working districts in VR at 19. He could be as eccentric as he liked. Lee checked the map and flicked back to Joy Gray. They would be at her parents' place soon. Joy was beautiful in a way that would last. 23, elegant and graceful, big dark eyes and the air of a future marked by stable, assured success. Her artwork had been featured in some of the top city galleries before she'd even graduated from university. The map flickered and enlarged. "Almost there," Lee said. "Better get up. You even looked this over."
"Banker and academic lost their girl to bad boy socialite who stole her away,"
Gong said, coughing, flicking in the air to lower the window and lighting up a chunky, badly rolled cigarette.
"Both only kids, spoiled shits probably. Han the bad boy, Joy the lost girl. I know what this is. Don't need no circus about it. Girl comes from good home, good family, but they keep her hemmed in, penned up, yeah? She does real good at school, makes it on the right path. Parents scramble to keep her steady through university, but then she gets out into the real world and meets this rich, wild, talented bastard who uses pretty girls like clothes. Throws them on, takes them off, leaves them on the floor. Han's even richer than she is, famous family, real famous, powerful too. What could go wrong, eh? Then he takes her down for a wild ride in VR, right down where anything's possible and nothing can hurt you. But that's when it gets too much for her. She's barely even tasted this before when now she's drowning in it. Maybe she wants to come up, but he's having too much fun. Dreamcrime. And that's what they call it when it's down there. Fucking poetic, eh? You're the straight man, you're the one checking the files. Is it Dreamcrime? Is that all it is? Or did they get that VR shit so real even we can't tell the difference when we're down there mopping up the mess?
Gong took a hard drag on the cigarette and grit his teeth and threw it away as a sudden rain came pounding. The cloudburst came so hard and so heavy they couldn't talk over it. It was still sunny and a crushing winter white. Then the rain was gone, and it was all fresh mid-winter off the motorway, spiraling down through a countryside that belonged to an era past, where mansions that once belonged to the rich, now dreaming in VR, stood like lonely watchmen over stone walls and greening graves. The trees were spindly with 1,000 skeletal fingers prodding. Lee wondered how many trees were even left in the city, and how many children spent 100 hours trying to create trees like this in VR. So perfect, so real they turned with the seasons. Those kids would probably never even put a finger to the bark of one of these living things. They wouldn't even have the urge. The countryside was making him romantic, dramatic. Maybe Gong was right. Maybe everything was simple. Maybe it was just the same story again and again, played out with stranger tech and fresh dimensions, but never removed from the steady cliches of the old waking world. "It's got to be down there," Gong said, flicking the map away from the windscreen. His blurry eyes cut with the shadows of the giant oaks lining the lane that led to the mansion of red slate and grey stone.
"Look at that antique. You can pick these things up dirt cheap now, shit. Would have killed for that 30 years ago.
Strange how the world turns, eh? The cruiser slowed as the AI tracked their passage along the lane, past a few fallen branches and the odd stone that had crumbled from the century-old walls. The mansion was surrounded by acres of luscious grounds, swirling burns and gentle valleys. Looks like an oil painting, Lee said.
Wait till you see what I paint in my patch of VR.
Gong said, flicked down the window and spat a thick glob of phlegm into the beautiful forested grounds. They rolled down the valley alongside a trickling stream until they came to the high iron gates. An AI avatar of Joy's father, Robert Gray, appeared on the windscreen feed.
"You're a little early, officers,"
the avatar said.
Woken up by a cock.
Gong replied quickly.
"Are there cockables crowing in the city?"
Cocks everywhere,
Gong said.
Full of them. Open the gate.
"Yes, officers."
The avatar disappeared and the gates retracted. They drove up a slight gradient of crystal-like black and white gravel to a circular driveway surrounding a fountain. High hedges hugged the rehab country mansion with huge panelled windows, ornate trellis, intricate stonework and several chimneys, two of them breathing spirals of smoke. Real carbon, you reckon? Lee asked. Gong rubbed his massive jutting chin as the cruiser pulled up. He waited for a moment, then squinted at the stacks above the gargoyles.
Can't be,
he said.
Probably a bigger crime than kidnapping, isn't it?
Yeah, but who's tracking that out here? Lee said. Shove a load of wood in a hole in your house, set it on fire? What digital traces that got? Gong murmured and looked up again at the chimneys as the cruiser door slid up and they stepped into the biting winter air. Lee checked his appearance in the car window and lifted up his shades to check his eyes. He spent too much time last night looking over the brief, and his eyes were still blurry from the contacts. Their uniforms were dark black and blue, lightly plated silver trimmings covered by thick fur-lined jackets. They looked serious, professional, better than the strange array of disguises they wore in VR. Things were simpler topside. Waking life had rules. Above the swept stone steps of the mansion, Robert and May Gray stood waiting. Lee could see they looked tired and anxious. He gave them an awkward smile as he walked towards the house. Gong didn't even seem to notice that they were there. Robert held his wife, and Lee saw the unease with which she tried to relax into his grip. Maybe they understood the reality of the situation. That was good. Lee didn't feel like needling his way through denial.
"Thank you for coming, officers,"
Robert said. We appreciate all the help and information you've given us so far. May said, her smile trying to push through the heavy makeup and recent tears still marked on her face. Doing everything we can, Lee said. The suspect has a high profile. We're hopeful we'll be able to find your daughter soon. Yeah, as soon as we can. Gong said and gave them a quick short smile as he flicked his eyes towards the chimney stacks.
"Please come here to the living room. We've already brewed the tea,"
Robert said. Lee and Gong followed them into the hallway. The floor was crisscrossed with red and black tile, the walls of gold and green wallpaper. Chandeliers hung from the ceiling. A staircase of brass trimmings and red carpets circled to a landing upstairs. Lee's eyes instinctively traced the walls for pictures or decorations connected to the victim.
Mind if we record?
Gong asked.
And we're gonna need full access to your residence console, including everyone's recent feeds. Might be a lead we missed, or something we need to go through later.
"I'm afraid we usually have our feeds turned off here, officer,"
Robert said.
"We seldom wear contacts or even run the console. We're rather fond of our privacy. An antiquated idea, I grant, but well, until recently it has seemed to favor us, but I suppose we are well into all this now and must do whatever we can to help."
May's face scrunched up as if she was about to cry, but she composed herself and took a deep breath.
I'll get the tea,
she said quickly, closing one of the doors to an adjoining room which, Lee noticed, smelled faintly of burnt carbon. Robert showed them into the first floor living room. One entire wall was covered by a shelf of real paper books. A slight veranda jutted out into framed windows, giving a wide view of the lawn and reclining hills leaning into fog. Portraits of what might have been deceased relatives hung over the fireplace, which Lee knew had definitely, recently, been used. He also noticed Robert looking at it, as if to check that any evidence had been disguised. "We ain't here about the carbon," Gong said, pacing at the window.
"Honestly, I wouldn't mind if you fired it up. Kinda curious, eh?"
Robert went to say something but then hesitated.
"Please, gentlemen, I'm sure you have some questions for us, that we really did try to get everything clear in the digital interview."
"Yeah, but sometimes there's no substitute for the real thing, right?"
Gong said and trailed his hand over the fireplace. Lee looked down at the floor. The scuffed wood might have been 100 years old. Real wood, used for housing, in the floors, in the books, in the fire. It almost felt like some VR vacation into the past. He took a deep breath and looked at the sunlight, the random patterns on the walls, the feel of the people around him. He was certain this was waking life. He could remember everything of the last few days. Robert sat, but Gong continued to walk around the room, his physical presence and hardened demeanor radiating like heat. He stood by the portraits as he flicked at the air, changing his contact feed, downloading everything from the residence console.
"You barely got a thing on here,"
Gong said.
Nothing back further than a few hours. You wiped this before we got here, eh?
Absolutely not, officer, Robert said, adjusting his tweed jacket over a collared shirt. Sir, if you look at the main feed, that's just standard for us. We were doing that long before Joy.
Gong grunted and continued flicking. Lee was curious to see if they had anything that might help them find where Ham might have taken Joy, but he didn't want to start immediately prying into what was obviously such a private house. He could tell the parents were rattled, and he needed them calm and trusting. May came back in with a serving tray and placed it on the antique table between them, minding the rug.
There's milk and sugar here too if you'd like it, she said. Add as much as you like.
Got any green tea? Gong said.
I like it bitter.
Sorry, only red, I'm afraid, May said.
I'll take it straight then,
Gong said and walked over before she could serve it. He poured out a high cup of strong dark tea, grimaced and took a sip.
That'll wake you up, he said. Mind if I look around?
Yes, of course, that would be fine, May said and looked to Lee. Lee knew he had come across as the measured, reasonable officer they wanted in charge of the situation. Gong's manner oiled the dynamic without them even having to fake it.
Would you need one of us to show you around?
Robert asked. Joy's room was... No need, I got the download, Gong said.
Just need 10 or 15 minutes. See if there's anything we missed online, eh?
But you do believe that Han took Joy? May asked, urgency seeping into her voice. The case is active, you're looking for her? Yeah, we're hounds on the trail, Gong said and walked out into the hall. We need to meet a certain threshold of proof to get a search warrant for the VR domain Joy's ID was last registered at, the Electric Glade, Lee said. After that, we can dive into it through the pods at the police VR facility. If we can find Joy in the Glade, we can trace her ID topside and find the pod where she's being kept, but the Electric Glade is private property, owned by the suspect's mother. No, we have your statements, you told us nothing was recorded. To get diving as soon as we can, really, we need evidence of the abduction, or at least a voice message from Joy, something we could take to a judge. If there's anything we missed on your console or recent feeds, our technicians will hopefully find it.
Yes, I understand,
May said.
But like we said in the interview, we don't keep a permanent record of our feeds here. We weren't recording when Joy called us. We don't track her ID. We stopped many years ago. We live differently out here. I'm sure you can see that. Robert travels occasionally for work, of course, and sometimes we go into the city, but we wanted our daughter's life to be more private, more contained than so many of her contemporaries. We didn't want her to be weighed down by her digital past, like so many of us were.
I know, Lee said, and that's not as uncommon as you think. You don't need to justify it to me, but we need something that implicates Han Shu as the abductor. Han's family owns the domain. He could stay down there for years. They could have him and Joy and VR pods maintained by a whole team. The Shu family owns 1,000 acres of property. It'd take half the city police a year to search every place they got for VR pods. Joy could be in any of them. I bet they got plenty of spare pods too, and if he has your daughter in one, there's no reason he's going to be waking her up anytime soon, risking her ID getting picked up on the city feed. I know it's frustrating, but it's even harder to get into digital property than someone's home. VR domain's the most valuable commodity on the planet. You're a banker, Mr. Gray. I don't need to tell you that. You probably know more about it than I do. Point is, your accusation alone won't be enough for a warrant. Ruby Sue has the best lawyers in the city. She'll find a way to get this case dismissed before she'll have her son on trial.
But Joy called us,
May said, her neck muscles straining with frustration.
She actually called us. She was distressed. She said Han had drugged her before, that he was forcing her into VR. She wouldn't lie. Why would she lie about something like that? You know she went into the Electric Glade. She was with Han in a domain owned by his family. Why couldn't you just get into Ruby Shu's house and look for a VR pod? Surely Joy's still in there.
The Shu family owns hundreds of properties, Lee said, and we don't have enough evidence yet for a warrant. If you had a record of the call, or a hard trace on Joy's ID, maybe we could...
Please, I just want you to get my daughter back before that bastard does anything to her,
Robert said, the mask of his composure dropping. I understand your anger and frustration, I do, Lee said. I'm on your side, we're on your side, but there are strict laws and procedures around digital crime, and for us to get access to the Glade, we need something that pins Han Shu down. We're going to have another search through the city feed. We have all of the contacts from your console now. We can see if Joy's friends recorded anything or another witness might turn up. Ain't seen one of these in a long time, Gong said, coming back into the room, holding a paper diary.